Welcome to the Vodcast. The Tourism and Hospitality Event Vodcast is brought to you by the Tourism and Hospitality Management Department within the School of Sport Tourism and Hospitality Management at Temple University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The purpose of this vodcast is to give our students a look into the T.H.E industries, the challenges and victories that are happening within our industries. I'm Christine Cleaver, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Benjamin Altschuler and Michael Sheridan. Ben, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Christine. We are very excited today because our guest is Jim Cohn, and we are going to be discussing meeting again. Mike?
Thanks, Ben. First and foremost, welcome, Jim. We really appreciate you spending time with us today. Can you give us a little bit of your background and how you got into your current position?
Sure. Thanks, Mike, and hi, Ben and Chris. Great to have a chance to say hi to everybody. So I actually grew up in an advertising and printing world background. That was our family business for about 30 years. We did record surveys for radio stations and got involved with a lot of different types of events for the radio stations. Fast forward a few more years, I started to connect with a person who was in the travel industry, and she needed someone to help her out when she was doing incentive trips for Pepsi, Coors, Canada Dry bottling companies. I was involved with helping her starting to execute these events. In the same vein, I also met the former Philadelphia Flyers Stanley Cup team one night, and they started asking me about events that they can maybe come to, because I told them I was going to a lot of events at that time. So I started to then show up at events, Chamber of Commerce mixers or organization mixers that would be in the region here, and I would show up with 3 or 4 of the Flyers. And then what happened was people started calling me, asking me, where can these guys be booked, or where's the next event that you might go at? So I should sort of put 2 and 2 together. I brought in the aspects of my advertising, printing background, the flyers, the booking sports celebrities at events, and then the travel world of learning how to plan meetings. And I figured if I was a little on the clueless side, who else would be, and also what is needed in the industry. So I put it all together, and in 1987, put out a publication. That was our first one, and through a couple big events on the riverfront on the Delaware River, and that was the start of our long 35-year run now almost.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you very much. So I always love hearing everybody's diverse background of how they got here. And yeah, you're like perfect. You have the advertising, the tourism, hospitality, and events all mixed in one. So awesome. So in June,
which is great because you get experience, and that's what was needed.
Awesome. So in June, you assisted in the planning of the PCMA PHL Tailgate Trade Show. This was the first in-person meeting for the region, post all of our COVID lockdown. Can you explain that planning process to us a little bit?
Well, the PCMA, the Professional Convention Management Association's chapter, had attended some of the other events that I was involved with. We threw a big event in July actually of 2019 at the Barns, and they all talked about how great of an event that was, and that was our summer outing, which I had been running for about 18 years. And the board for PCMA was getting together and talking about, we need to help bring the industry back. We were coming out of the pandemic at that point, and suggested, can we partner up on a potential event? So we kicked around the ideas, and we started to talk around about flea markets, and that outdoor was a great opportunity to experience and talk to people with not having to be too close. We never said that we wanted to be that you're not socially distanced; it was physically distanced. So we always wanted to make sure that everyone would be safe. So when the PCMA president and executive director approached me, asked me if I'd be interested in talking about some ideas. We sat down, formulated, and came up with the Tailgate Trade Show. So basically, it was like a flea market for the hospitality and event industry. And soon as it started to be promoted, the response was unbelievable, from exhibitor standpoint to attendee standpoint to the international PCMA organization saying this is the first event. It's an awesome idea. So we had about 80 some odd exhibitors and about 100 plus attendees from all around the region come to this event.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jim, very much for selling the insight. Tell us the insight into that. I know at Temple we were there, and it was an awesome event. It was awesome, to be back in the saddle again, and
Yep.
and
Yep.
talking with everybody and socializing, even though we were distanced, but socializing again. The smiles were just it was wonderful.
So, it's interesting. I saw more people cry that day just because that was one of the first events that they were able to be out at and to touch and hang, to hug people, to see people who we had not seen for close to a year. It was a very emotional event, to the point that we had an after party and people still did not want to leave after that. So it was a great time, and people already asked, can we do one in the fall, which PCMA and I talked about, and we thought it'd be too close. So we're probably going to look at spring 2022 to do another one.
Wonderful.
So Jim, talking about future events, obviously the event world has gone through a number of changes and innovations over the past year and a half. What innovations do you think will remain in the industry long after COVID?
The hybrid situation is probably the most talked about scenario, and I think that is going to remain, and it's going to also change. There's a lot of people who are very tired of being on Zoom or on virtual calls. There's a lot of people who want to stay on those calls and to connect because of travel bans and restrictions. So I think what's going to happen is you're going to have a hybrid, but it's not the easiest thing to do. So I think what happens is the hybrid model will keep evolving. There's going to be different ways that people are going to be able to connect online, but then also be in person. We did take a couple surveys during the pandemic about meeting in person and also being virtual, and overwhelmingly the people wanted to be in person. It was probably like 85% wanted to be in person. Some industries are going to have to be in person just due to their type of programming, but there are going to be a lot that will remain on a virtual basis. So the trade show coordinators and convention coordinators are taking a look at what's the best platforms or what's the best way to keep things moving, if it either be a convention, a trade show, or a conference or a meeting, how to really keep people engaged. That's going to be the probably the most trying situation, but I do think at least that hybrid model will be there for the long term. The masking situations and the people being asked about being vaccinated at events prior to attending, it's going to be interesting because you're going to have a variety of events, from conventions to outdoor concerts, and control of it. But everyone's going to try to follow as many guidelines as possible, I think.
That's interesting. I think the hybrid model is kind of the best of both worlds in some cases. Getting those people that want to experience the in-person opportunity, it gives them that chance. And for those that may not be just there yet, it gives them the opportunity to be included as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting because try to have a really good food sampling event online.
Yeah.
I always said the next phase of the hybrid models, or at least the virtual models, will be a smell-o-vision and a taste-o-vision. Something that you can actually push something on your computer and you can smell Hershey's chocolate come through your computer, but you're going to have to taste it. So unless you're getting a delivery of it, it's going to be a little challenging. But people really, a lot of business is done that face-to-face after the conference, after the meeting. Let's go out to dinner, let's talk, let's discuss. So it's changing a little bit, but again, when we had the PCMA PHL tailgate event, we ended up at dinner after the after party. So we literally had the trade show, the after party, and the after party, and I think they even kept going after I left.
So Jim, one of the things that you were talking about is concerts, and it's been great to see those sorts of things opening up, people getting out there. We just had Made in America here a couple of days ago in Philly, but you hit on some of this in what you were saying a little bit earlier, but obviously it's been a tough year and a half, 2 years for the event industry. So over the past 18 months, what do you think have been some of the biggest general challenges for the industry? And are there any in particular or specifically that stand out to you, and why?
The big challenges that we probably have never experienced before was the changing guidelines. On July 15th, 2020, we were planning a pretty good sized event out of Drexel Brook, and we had about 100 attendees coming, and it was going to be a mixed hybrid event, being that it was going to go live. We were also going to have people in person, and that July 15th was when we were having our meeting, and the event was going to be on July 30th. So this was our basically our last meeting before the event. And at about 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Governor Wolf came in and said all events are canceled, starting, I think it was that day or the next day. It rocked the industry. I mean, it when you said you have to stop events, everything was canceled. So all the people who had events planned, that was canceled, all the food that was ordered, all the services and supplies. And then, fast forward a certain amount of months later, you had another changing guidelines. And as we wrapped around into 2021, guidelines were changing almost hourly, daily, then hourly, to the point that we were having Zoom calls talking about, well, what is the exact equation? I mean, I felt like I had to be a mathematician to try to figure out what the closures were. So the biggest challenge was really the changing guidelines and how everything was shut down for the events community and the private events community mostly. Yet they were putting in a lot of money into the safety of the guests, safety of the employees. There was ways that they were doing that would have actually been better, because then people were still having events. They just were having them at their houses, which was even a little bit more trying. The communication level, I think, was one of the biggest problems that we ran into. And I used my press credentials to talk to certain departments. And it was interesting to hear how things were being changed. But we all dealt then with politicians. That's one thing that a lot of the industry started to talk to. And I think they needed to really build more people from the industry on these task forces. Then once things started to change, the job force. I mean, once everything opened up, people were excited. We're going to open up. We're going to get more hours. We're going to get more revenue. We're going to get more business. Then the job force was the challenge, and still is. And hopefully it will start changing now that the unemployment situation has changed last week, I think it was. So, I think I think that has been probably the hardest thing is the changing guidelines, the communication, and then the job force for, these last 18 months.
Now, certainly these are some tough challenges, but you've weathered it over the past 18 months. So if you were to look back, instead of looking at some of the challenges, what would you say are your greatest victories that you've had? And just like your challenges, do any of your greatest victories stand out, and what makes them stand out?
We were going on calls. I was averaging about 4 or 5 a week of calls with the politicians, with the industry, with PRLA, with a group called PEP Group. And what I saw the victories were is that you saw competitors working with each other to try to build the industry back up, because we were all in a rough ocean, but we were all in different boats. Mm-hmm. And what was occurring was the fact that we were helping each other. So there was a lot of caterers who were very competitive in the market, yet on our calls, they were all trying to work together because they were all having the same problems and issues. Mm-hmm. So the connection with our industry became extremely strong. You had, we do go to all these mixers and meetings, and we'll hang out the bar afterwards and talk. But this gave us a platform to support anyone who was helping to bring the industry back to a certain level. I liked that the politicians were getting to know about the industry more. I liked that we had some advocacy and some help with certain people. I saw a lot of standouts, people who were going to fight for the cause of sorts, in Harrisburg, and talk about, how the industry is really a great industry. It's a safe industry. But the one thing that really hit me was, and I think it might have resonated with the political world, the politicians at least, and I'm just going to say in Pennsylvania, is that the hospitality industry, tourism travel, is probably the largest industry to affect people because of the trickle down. I believe it's number 2 in the state of Pennsylvania, with agriculture being number 1. But this industry affects quite a few hundred other industries when you start to think about it. And I think that really, again, resonated with political people as well as our industry, because it goes all the way down to the limousine drivers, to the dry cleaning companies that supply to the hotels, to the printing companies that print banners for trade shows. And it then resonates up to the agriculture, because it's the largest buying industry for food. The restaurants, the hotels, even the educational institutions. So I think the camaraderie of the hospitality, tourism, meetings, events, community really was strong, because we all say that anyone who asks about what's like my involvement with ROI, and I always say, well, what is the I? And they said, what's our investment and how much we're spending? I said, no, it's the investment in your time. So I call it ROR, return on relationships. So I really looked at this industry as a relationship-built industry, and how everyone helped everyone else. And that's what I think was the salvation. And, if you needed staff, they bring staff over, or you needed help getting food out to people jumped in. So I think that's what really I saw as the biggest accomplishments.
I think that says a lot about our industry. I mean, that hospitable aspect. And, we try to teach in the classroom to never burn bridges. And this is just a perfect example of that in practice.
Oh yeah, well, it's funny. We get interns in all the time, as you know. I mean, we've been doing it for, almost 30 years now, because my editor's been with me for 27, and he was an intern. So we've been working with internships, and I think it's really how we all work together, how we support, the industry. I think the most unified industry, but it's a hospitable industry. So, whether it be whatever part of it, it's all affecting everybody. We created, when you talk about too, about one of the pluses on around when everything started to close down in March of 2020, we've created a video idea called #HospitalityReady. And the #HospitalityReady idea was to say that our industry is ready from all aspects. So we then approached a couple other people, and we created this video that was a moving video talking about, we're ready for you when you're ready. And all the CVBs, the 5 CVBs in our region here, jumped in. We had venues, we had caterers, we had rental companies, attractions, and it was a very moving video. And we've relaunched it about four or five times because, again, with the changing of the guidances, we said, okay, we're ready, let's launch it. And that was pulled back, but we kept relaunching it. And even with our publication, our first cover out of the pandemic, we created a Zoom-looking cover, just giving, helping out with all of our clients who we've had for 10, 15, 20 years. So we were there to help. We lent our office space out to anyone who didn't feel comfortable just staying at home or needed to get away from whatever, because most of my staff went virtual. So I had 4 office spaces that I was paying for. So we invited people to come in and use our services. So we were all being hospitable at that time.
That says a lot.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful to hear that. And I will always tell students, this is a people-oriented industry. So hearing about that relationship piece is just really important. I think we have one question left, and this used to be a fun question to ask people, but nowadays trying to predict the future seems like not an easy thing to do. But looking ahead, I hopefully we enter some sort of post-pandemic world. What do you think is next for the events industry? I think you hit on it a little bit, but looking forward, what do you think is going to happen?
I think things will. I'm not going to say the word get back to normal at all, because we don't use that phrase, and I hate that word pivot anymore. I think there's new things that will come about, new engagements. I know we've done a lot of focus groups during the pandemic. We have a think tank talk event that we do. We've done numerous ones on that, and I think what's going to happen, there's going to be a lot more experiential type meetings and conferences and events. So it's not just going to a meeting, sitting and listening. It's going to be breaking into focus groups or smaller groups. It's going to be out in the field, maybe trying herbs when you're doing an event and seeing how it pairs up with wines. I think there's going to be more culinary events that they're going to want to be cooking. So instead of just watching, they're going to be participating. So I think it's my last think tank talk event, which was 2 weeks ago. I think most of the people said that when they're planning a meeting, the one thing they want to do is to have things to engage the employees or attendees, and to see things, to do things. I'm seeing that's probably, they're going to go in. That's why I like a lot of the museums have had more interactive type scenarios, so that I think they're going to do that in the events world. They're going to just have a lot more engagements, just to keep people focused and to be interested in coming out to the events. You can go to an event, or you can be part of the event. So I'm thinking that's what's going to probably be the hot topic. I think there's also going to be a lot more communication, because I think that's one thing that's always had been something that was lacking. People would just say, yeah, come to this event, or we need to promote this event. No, you need to really continually promote it, because you want to keep people on the right path. So I think there's going to be a unique type of events that will be coming about, different, but engaging and experiential.
We love experiential
Cool.
learning.
For
Very
sure,
exciting
for
for
sure.
us.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Well, Jim, thank you very much for joining us today on the Tourism Hospitality Event podcast, brought to you by the Tourism and Hospitality Department at Temple University. We appreciate you being here and hanging out with us.
Oh, great. Well, thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you at the next event.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim. Have a great day.
Thank you, Jim.
Great. Thank you now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.